You stop. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 21st Oman International ELT Virtual Conference here in Muscat, Oman. My name is Khalsa and I am the head of the conference public relation team. I'll be the compare for these 2 days. With a total of 61 papers and poster presentation, as well as workshops, this year's conference covers a wide range of topics under the theme Stepping Out of the ELT Comfort Zone, Changes in Teaching and Learning Cultures, including teaching and learning, assessment and testing, curriculum development, e-learning, and quality management. In addition to educational psychology and special needs education. The conference aims to create a platform where ELT teachers can come together and discuss the ways they can enhance the quality of their teaching in the different stages of their careers through learning about new and innovative teaching practices and perspectives. We would like to thank our partner for this year's event, Cambridge Assessment, for being with us this year. Today, we will begin with the opening ceremony with 2 speeches given by Ms. Uhud Al-Hattali, Conference Chair, and the Honorable Dr. Badriya Shahi, Director of CBS and Deputy Chairman of the Oman State Council.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all joining us today. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, and honored guests. On behalf of the Conference Organizing Committee, I would like to welcome you all to the Oman 21st International ELT Conference organized by the Center for Preparatory Studies at Sultan Qaboos University. As we open this conference, I would like to express my gratitude and warm welcome to our plenary, keynote, and featured speakers, as well as the presenters and participants. This conference aims to create a platform where ELT teachers can come together and discuss the ways they can enhance the quality of their teaching in the different stages of their careers through learning about new and innovative teaching practices and perspectives. We are certain that all of you will benefit from our conference and acquire new skills and knowledge in the hope that you will leave us with inspirational and practical classroom ideas. There is no doubt that this century has brought upon and stimulated significant change in ELT. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the change and forced us all to step out of our comfort zones. The famous Australian photographer Gina Militia once said, "A comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there." It is indeed true that when we are in the comfort of our face-to-face classrooms, we get used to how easy it is to be in control of what is going on in our classrooms. However, it sometimes gets monotonous and somewhat lacks creativity. During the online teaching experience, we realized that looking at black screens and not getting response in return to prompts and questions was a bit frustrating for us teachers, because we had no control over what the students were doing during their class time and didn't even know whether they were there in the first place, which made us feel uncomfortable at times. There are a lot of lessons that we learned throughout our teaching experience during the pandemic, all of which are reflected in the different areas of ELT teaching, such as teaching methodologies, curriculum development, assessment and testing, and quality management, to name a few. This year, we introduced educational psychology to our conference to be able to discuss some of the issues that arose during the pandemic on both the psychological and emotional levels. Symptoms of anxiety, fear, and depression were experienced by many, which required some form of intervention. We teachers found ourselves unable to assist students because we are not equipped with the knowledge and the skills to provide our learners with the support they need. And on top of that, we didn't see them face to face to be able to talk to them or refer them to the people who can provide them with the right kind of help. To be able to take this topic further, our plenary speaker, Professor Saeed Al-Dhafri, will discuss these issues and how to deal with them in his speech today. E-learning and computer and mobile-assisted language learning and testing are two of the highly discussed topics in our conference this year. At the onset of the pandemic, we revisited some of our teaching and assessment materials that we were using in our regular face-to-face classrooms, and we came to learn that they are not adaptable to accommodate learning through online platforms. We had to go through multiple stages of trial and error to figure out what works best with a particular group of students and what to discard from the pre-existing materials we had. With the prevalence of online teaching and distance learning, we came to learn that certain tasks didn't really require our step-by-step guidance in the first place, and that taking a step back and allowing students to work at their own pace could be helpful to our students' learning process. Collaborative learning and learners' motivation to participate in online environments were two issues of concern to language teachers. Many of us had moments of despair when we had spent hours and hours of preparing certain tasks, only to present them to the students during class time and find out that they were not interested in doing them. However, it seemed that incorporating collaborative tasks and interactive materials through different online platforms created some interest in learners to participate and join the discussion. We cannot wait for you all to attend the presentations and workshops presented at our conference this year, as we are certain that they will ignite a spark of curiosity and creativity that you will carry out in your classrooms in the future. Finally, I would like to express our thanks to Cambridge Assessment, who are partnering with us this year, and we look forward to working with them in the future as well. I would like to also express my sincere appreciation to all my colleagues in the conference organizing committee, its subcommittees, and our amazing volunteer teachers from the CBS faculty for their invaluable contribution to this year's conference. It is due to their dedication, proactive thinking, and resourcefulness that we are able to present this conference to you all. So, on behalf of the Oman International ELT Virtual Conference, I thank you all for being a part of our event, and I wish you a fruitful professional development experience at our conference. Stay safe, and may Allah bless you all. Thank you.
And now, the Honorable Dr. Badriya Shehi will give the welcome speech.
Honored guests, presenters, and participants, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this year's conference. The theme of our 21st ELT conference is Stepping Out of the ELT Comfort Zone, Changes in Teaching and Learning Cultures. The unexpected request to shift from previously taught face-to-face school and university courses to online teaching definitely pose great challenges to teaching and learning since the beginning of the pandemic. Teaching staff of all backgrounds and ages had to prepare and deliver their classes from home with all the practical and technical challenges this entailed, and often without proper technical support. One of the areas where teachers had to step out of their comfort zones was in designing and organizing for better learning experiences and creating distinctive learning environments with the help of digital technologies. We are currently going through what some experts call the post-digital era, where the integration of technology in ELT classrooms is inevitable. This year's conference could not come at a better time, as it aims to assist teachers who always aspire to provide their students with the best learning experiences and those who are willing to rise to the challenge. With the selected topics of the conference, we are attempting to address the most pressing needs of professionals in the field. The conference also aims to assist teachers in achieving this goal by providing opportunity to establish connections between theory and practice, as well as explore the different ways they can apply the research findings to practice. Another major goal of our conference is to assist practitioners in the field to create spaces for enriching discussions and exchange of knowledge, practices, and experiences in ELT. One of the key ideas this year's conference stresses is that it is not enough to learn how to use the tools of integrating online teaching and learning into our curriculum. Educators need to also know how to use the tools of online teaching effectively. Some might argue that effective learning and language acquisition is directly connected to learners' motivation, which suggests that teachers must be equipped with the required skills and tools to achieve this purpose. Online teaching and learning has stressed the importance of harboring independent learning in students, which is highly influenced by learners' intrinsic motivation. Educational psychology was added to this year's conference list of topics in order to be able to address the issue of learners' motivation, independent, and self-regulated learning. A challenge that affected teaching and learning, which emerged early onto the pandemic, was coping with the social distancing and social gatherings restrictions. It is argued by many researchers in the field of ELT that social interaction is at the heart of the communicative language teaching approach, which prompts the use of language in real-life situations. Being at home and talking to a screen wasn't always ideal for neither teachers nor students, which might have hindered the learning process on students' part. It is fair to say that despite ELT teachers' attempts to encourage students' participation and use of language during the class meetings, those attempts were not always successful. Assessment and testing was one of the major areas affected by the pandemic. The fact that almost all assessments were conducted with the help of technology had led educators to question the validity and reliability of the assessment tasks in reflecting language learners' comprehension and ability to apply the newly acquired knowledge in their use of the English language. It was necessary to make changes here and there and ensure that the assessment tools used are as accurate as possible in evaluating learners' real level of learning. In any teaching context, it is vital to always put the learner's needs first through assessing and re-evaluating the teaching techniques and assessment tools being used to ensure that they are actually serving the purpose they are supposed to in the first place. In discussing a variety of topics related to the field of ELT, this year's conference serves as a major professional development opportunity for practitioners in the field to reflect and improve on their teaching practices, whether in a physical or an online setting. You will be exposed to different points of view and conflicting research findings. But it is important to keep in mind that the field of ELT has been one of the most diverse and ever-developing fields throughout the years. Accepting other beliefs and teaching strategies might be what we need to have breakthroughs in our teaching practices. It has always been our mission to make this conference serve as a place of interaction, reflection, and innovation. Before we begin, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the colleagues who have contributed to the organization and reimagining of this conference. I would like to take a moment of your time to express my gratitude and appreciation to all my colleagues who have contributed to the organization and growth of this major professional event. First and foremost, I would also thank the conference organizing committee and subcommittees for their outstanding and brilliant work. I am grateful to all the committee members, CPS IT team, and teacher volunteers for their valuable contributions. On behalf of the Center for Property Studies at Sultan Qaboos University, I would like to thank the university administration for their unfailing morale and financial support. I thank the University Press, Department of Public Relations, the Center for Information Systems, and the Center for Educational Technology at SQU for their help in preparing for our virtual conference. Once again, I would like to thank you all for participating and being here with us. May it be an inspiring and stimulating experience for all of us and guide us in our teaching journey, where we are not afraid of stepping out of our comfort zones and following new paths towards the ultimate goal of improving our teaching practices to the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruhud and Dr. Badriya. These speeches will follow by the plenary speech at 10 o'clock, presented by the Professor Saeed Al-Dhafri, Professor of Educational Psychology and the Director of Social Observatory at Sultan Qaboos University. He will give a talk on the psychological dimensions of online learning, the promising role of self-regulated learning models. Later today, the featured speaker, Professor Hisham Sabini, Regional Head of Assessment Services and Recognition Cambridge Assessment English, will give a talk on learning-oriented assessment. The keynote speaker, Professor Deborah Myhill, Director of the Center for Research in Writing at the University of Exeter, will give her speech on changing ELT writing cultures, building a reader-writer relationship through Metadata course tomorrow afternoon. She will follow up her speech with a certified workshop later on the same day. The other conference presenters will give their presentation concurrently on the 2-day of the conference as per the schedule available on the ELT conference website. Now, I'll be sharing my screen with you to show you how to access the conference program and how to join the different workshops. This is the main page of the conference. Here, if you can see a picture, this picture is hyperlinked. If you click on it, it would take you to this PDF file that has the conference program. If you go down, you will see all the workshops here that are presented in these 2 days. These titles are hyperlinked. So if you click on any of it, it would take you to another page that has the presenter bio and an abstract of the paper or workshop he or she is presenting. If you want to join any of the workshops, you go down here at the bottom, you will see the days. If you click, for example, on Thursday, you will see Thursday schedule. Here are all the workshops presented on Thursday. If you want to join any of the sessions, here you have a Zoom icon. It says join session. If you click on it, it would take you immediately to the page where the session is running. Okay, from here, you open the Zoom meeting and you will be there. Also, you can access the conference presenters list from the main page. Here, we have the presenter icon. This is the PDF file that has the list of presenters. If you go down, you will see all the presenters and like brief information about them. These are the days. You can join whatever workshop you like. And now we'll be waiting for Professor Saeed Al-Dhufri to give his speech at 10 o'clock.
السلام عليكم Prof. السلام عليكم Prof.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الحال بخير إن شاء الله.
الحمد لله دكتورة، كيف أخباركم؟
تمام الحمد لله، الله يسلمكم ويحفظكم.
أهلا
So,
وسهلا.
for this presentation, you have 45 minutes to present and then followed by 5 minutes question answers, right?
Okay.
Okay. And you want me to remind you like 5 minutes before the end of the presenting time?
I can't hear you. 5 minutes for what, Doctora?
Like towards the end.
What's for?
5 minutes. Just to tell you that you have 5 more minutes left.
Okay, okay, good.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, Prof. Said, are we ready to start?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to the plenary session of the ELT conference. I am Zahra Lawati, and I'll be moderating the session. Just a quick reminder that all microphones and videos have been muted, but please feel free to use the question answer function to ask any questions if you have any, okay? I'll start with introducing Prof. Said. Then that will be followed by Prof. Said's presentation for 45 minutes, followed by 5 minutes question answers. So Prof. Said is a professor of educational psychology and the director of Social Observatory Oman. Prof. Said completed his PhD at UBC, Canada in 2006. He has co-authored 120 refereed journal articles, 4 books, 6 book chapters, and 161 conference papers. He received many academic awards, including Sultan Qaboos Award for Culture and Science, Showman's Research Award in Jordan, Faisal Al-Thani Research Award in 2017 and 2018. TRC National Award in 2014, 2015, and 2019, and the G.M. Dunlop Award for the Best Doctoral Thesis in Canada, Educational Psychology 2006 from CAPS. The title of today's presentation is The Psychological Dimensions of Online Learning, the Promising Role of Self-Regulated Learning Models. Prof. Said, the floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله. Thank you very much, Dr. Zahra, and special thanks for the ELT conference organizers for having me in this conference. I am really delighted to be part of this conference, and actually in the last few years I have been presenting in different topics in the same conference. So my talk is titled by Please just let me know, is the presentation is clear? And is it moving after my first slide?
It's your first slide,
Okay,
Professor.
good.
Right.
The
Yes.
title is The
Clear.
Psychological Dimensions of Online Learning, the Promising Role of Self-Regulated Learning Models. The goals of this talk is divided into two themes. The first is to explore the psychological dimensions and the learner psychological experiences on online or distance learning. Actually, I will use online and distance learning to convey the same meaning, but we know that there are differences between the two concepts. But most of my talk will apply on both of them. The second goal is to examine the self-regulated learning models in the context of online learning and how can we benefit from SRL in conceptualizing the online learning and maximizing the benefits, avoiding the disadvantages that are linked to online learning. Psychologists talk about three stages of teaching or teacher's journey in his or her teaching. The first stage is called teacher self-centered. And this is usually for novice teachers who are just starting their teaching profession, and they are more likely to be self-centered, which means that they are focusing on their other people views about themselves. Do my students like me? What other teachers will say about me? What's about the school principal? Will I be able to control the classroom? So these issues of just kind of identity conflict, we can call it, that some teachers, not all of them for sure, because we define novice teachers here not based on years of teaching, rather by the richness or the lack of teaching experiences. So this is the first stage, and people or teachers in general don't stay long in this stage. Actually, those who stay in this stage, they are more likely to leave the teaching profession. And based on our research, we have done a national study a few years ago where we compared those teachers who left teaching with those who continued to teach. It was so clear that those students, most of them, I will say, they were in this stage. The second stage is teaching centered. And this is a very common stage where teachers are really concerned about the issues related to teaching, starting with the load of teaching, the classroom organization, student achievement, lesson plans, the material that I need to prepare, and so on. So these, we call them teaching centered stage. And most teachers in the school or at university levels are in this stage. Very few who reach the third stage, which is the student teacher centered stage. And this is a very important stage because in this stage, teachers become in influencing not just the cognitive part of the students, but also all aspects of the student personalities, including their emotional, cognitive, behavioral, motivational aspects of life, all these things that usually educational systems are hoping to reach when they establish schools and university. And this stage is characterized by, as I mentioned, teachers' ability to influence all aspects of student personality based on his or her success on establishing very strong relationship with the students and also accounting for individual differences. These are the main aspects. And I started with these stages of teaching to remind myself and the researchers attending the conference, as well as instructors or teachers who may listen to this speech, is that whether it is online teaching or the normal teaching, we need to ask about ourselves, where are we in these stages? In order to reach successful teaching experiences, we need to reach this third stage. With COVID-19 pandemic and the closing of most schools all over the world, we had to. It was kind of forced change on all of us, whether we are students or teachers at different levels, to switch to online learning. And you will notice that my speech is focusing on this change. This is sudden change, because we know that there are many universities and schools who have been using online learning heavily as a teaching means more than 20 years. So we are not talking about those people. Mostly, well, part of it, but mostly we are talking about the rest of the world who have been forced to shift or to do this shift in an unexpected era. COVID-19 pandemic resulted in different challenges in all aspects of life, but within education, we are focusing on four main aspects of challenge, which are the social aspects, the cognitive aspects, emotional and academic aspects of the challenge that resulted because of COVID. So it is not related only to closing schools and universities, but rather on the whole experience of having COVID-19 in our life. If we look at the history of learning systems, we will see that there are three main, I will say, systems. There are many more, but these are the three main systems, which is the speech system, where learning depends heavily on the conversation happening between the instructor and the student, whether it is an official school setting or in general setting. Then we started using papers like books and other materials through which we convey the knowledge to our students. So that will be the P-learning. And then we moved in the 90s of the last century to the electronic learning, where many schools and universities shifted to e-learning. This shift actually is not, an automatic process. Usually, especially during these days, because of COVID-19, the shift was not automatic. Actually, most people will enjoy being in the comfort zone where they are, familiar with the things that they are doing. They are comfortable about the skills that they have and the achievement level that they have, they get. And if you introduce any change, including the online learning, then you expect to face resistance from people. And just to mention that not all people go through these 7 stages or steps, most of them. And also, if they go, they may go through them with different levels. Some people will reject the change, so those people will benefit less from what's going on around them. Other people will accept after rejection, or they will accept immediately, and then they will start to integrate that system to their life, And after integration, they start also to develop some own strategies that help them to maximize the benefit of online learning, and then until they get the last stage here in this chart that I just imagined based on the research, where they get to the stage of innovation, so they don't stop in just one level of having or delivering their lectures or teaching online. No, actually they start to innovate new things to their students and to themselves. And actually this is stage what all educators hope to reach during this stage of life. But you may notice that with the school starting to reopen and also the universities, recent research shows that some people will tend to go back to the initial comfort zone. So they will get rid of their achievement and gains and skills actually that they get during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they just go to their initial stage. And this actually happens because they did not get to the fifth stage, which is the integration. They usually accept that experience because of forced change, and that's why they usually will go back. And this is very important. I want to raise here at the beginning of my presentation, because research, I am not covering actually in this presentation, but research shows that there are a lot of benefits from online learning and online environment, which can facilitate the normal teaching. But with this kind of mental attitude, then unfortunately many people, many schools would lose this benefits of online learning when they go to their first stage of comfort zone. And this is, I think, it is responsibility of universities, schools, and administrations, where they need to kind of follow up with the practices that are common in their schools or in their universities. To think in terms of the psychological aspects of online learning and what happened to us with this shift, we always think about the diverse context of online learning, which is really making this learning experience somehow difficult. So this is the first factor. And the complexity of its component. It is really wide in learning environment that it is difficult to control, especially because of the uncertainty and lack of early experiences that many people experience when they started, whether teachers or students. My analysis here will apply to both students and teachers. So lack of early experiences, uncertainty, complexity, diverse context, all these factors make the online learning experience to be difficult. This is a capture of one of the conference presentation where we presented a qualitative study that we did here at Sultan Qaboos University. I just brought some main findings which explain the students or shows the students' experience of online learning. So the challenges were mainly, as the student indicated, no sufficient experience and skill to employ various learning strategies, weak knowledge of the types of learning strategies to be used, and not motivated to learn. This is a very important issue when it comes to online learning, especially when using this online learning system, and also limited workshops and courses that were offered actually at school levels or university levels to help students in this transition to online learning. So it is clear actually how these challenges actually are faced by our students and teachers. During this pandemic, actually, a lot or like plenty of research has been done that showed students, both actually school or university, and most research is done at university level, shows that students have developed high levels of anxiety, fear, depression, and post-COVID-19 future anxiety. We did a study covering different higher education institutions besides SQU, and actually it was like common findings that we found, especially in terms of an anxiety which showed high levels, followed by fear and depression. I will show some examples of the studies quickly. Actually, as I mentioned, there are like hundreds of studies all over the world, but I will just mention few examples of the studies that we did here at the university. For example, we examined relationship between just a second, between social anxiety and the contradictions of self-awareness, psychological adjustment methods during this pandemic at SQU. We had a sample of 422 university students, majority were females. In this study, we examined three variables: social anxiety, self-awareness, contradictions, and psychological adjustment. And as you can see, I didn't present the slide for levels, but here, as you can see, that a psychological adjustment was influenced by the social anxiety that these students okay, just a second, I'm trying to minimize this. Okay. Psychological adjustment, specifically the positive oneself here, the results show that 15% of the variance on positive adjustment it can be explained by the social anxiety and the real self and the ideal self. And as you can see here, as social anxiety increases, psychological adjustment decrease. As for the positive adjustment related to others, also 6% of variance was explained in this model, and mostly it was or resulted from the real self. If we come to the negative coping that students feel, we see that 20% of variance in negative coping can be explained by these three variables: social anxiety, real self, and ideal self. And as you can see, as social anxiety increases, negative coping increases with the students. In contradiction to that, when the feeling of real self increases, the negative coping decreases, which is emphasize the importance actually of SRL, as I will indicate later at the end of this presentation. We looked at possible gender differences in these three or four three variables with their subscales. We had 6 subscales, and as you can see from the p-value here, there were no gender differences. And actually, I noticed that in many of our studies that we have done, like personally, I have done almost 10 studies during COVID looking at different psychological variables along with my students, current student or former student or colleagues. And mostly these studies supported that there are no gender differences, which may raise some questions about the gender differences that we find in normal teaching, and how online teaching, online learning did not show these differences, which convey that there are other factors that may influence gender differences when it becomes to when we go back to the normal school. In terms of academic years, also there was no clear, actually, at least in this study, no differences. But in other studies, when we examined, for example, students' exam anxiety in one of the studies that we did after a few months of closing, we found there were some gender differences, but here no differences. Sorry about that. What is happening here? Other study, we looked at post-COVID future and anxiety, fear of COVID, and optimism and pessimism among university students at SQU. I'm not sure why the slides are going fast, but sorry for that. We looked at gender differences, and also we found no differences in the 4 variables, as you can see here. No gender differences. In terms of academic years, there were some differences. Mostly, actually, third-year students. Fourth-year students, fourth and fifth-year students are more likely to show higher fear of COVID and future anxiety. Also, as I can see here, second year compared to first year also shows a higher level of anxiety and fear of COVID-19. As you can see here from the path analysis that we examine a mediational relationship, it is clear that fear of COVID-19 that these students show predicted significantly their future anxiety. This was mediated by the pessimism that these students show. What does this model tells us is to pay attention to these days, actually, post-COVID anxiety, because as the fear of COVID-19 increases, the future anxiety increases. This can be mediated by lowering the level of pessimism that these students may have, and this can be achieved by some techniques based on self-regulated learning. Actually, not only students who experienced, we did also some other studies with parents, and as you can, as you may expect, if parents feel anxiety and depression, then they are more likely also to, influence negatively their children. So this is a big national study. We had 2,476 parents who participated. And as you can see here, 65% of the participants reported severe depression, 25 reported moderate depression. And anxiety was reported by anxiety extremely severe was reported by 15% and severe by 70%. This was early in COVID because another research that we did this year shows some lower levels. As for stress, 25% shows severe stress, 61 shows moderate stress. Okay, so these only examples are actually of many studies because of the limited time that we have. This gives us a very important message about how can we understand our behavior within online learning, combined with the health issues by COVID-19. Human behavior in general, actually, as psychologists agree, is very complex behavior. And to understand it, we need to kind of have a comprehensive view of it in order to understand actually the actual human behavior. That's why psychologists from different psychology perspectives tried to, understand this behavior within normal teaching or online teaching. One of the model, the social cognitive model, looks at our behavior in terms of 3 dimensions: the behavior itself, also the person with his or her all kind of characteristics, in addition to the environment, which is very important also to understand the human behavior. Looking at the literature, the psychological literature, actually all models have examined distance learning or online learning. It depends on the context that we are talking about. I will just go quickly through these models because we don't have enough time. The cognitive model looks at distance learning in terms of the cognitive processes that students go through when they are on online learning. And here we talk about different strategies, including cognitive strategies, metacognitive strategies, students' attention, their abilities to follow while they are far away from the teacher ability to kind of attract attention of these students. Social cognitive model, which kind of expand the cognitive model to also include the social aspects of distance learning, including the teacher environment, the home environment, the school environment, and also the internet environment, which is very important in this regard. The developmental model as well. When you apply the distance learning, you need to think about what kind of developmental characteristics that these students have, which may influence the learning. One of the studies tried to examine in a learning moment how the cognitive and the emotional processing may influence learning outcomes on online learning. And actually, the study showed that it is really important not only to kind of focus on cognitive elements of teaching, but rather it is really important to capture and to involve the emotional processing when we are communicating with our students online. Psychology of reading through online technology, the internet, the different movies that we use, all things that involve reading. So research showed the importance of self-interaction, self-monitoring, and also they examined the eye point measurement, which influence how the students are able to benefit from online learning. The psychology of word also, how can we make the online environment to be attractive? Do we notice the effect of the word size, the physiological reaction of the students and the teacher, the emotional reaction? All these actually are very important. Another school is the psychology of colors. How can we pay attention to the colors that we are using? And that's why I say there are many benefits. And one important actually advantage of the online learning is the applying the principle of psychology of colors. because in online environment, as an instructor, actually, I have rich environment which I can, invest in order to teach my students. The Gestalt psychology also is very important as a school of psychology, because it focuses on the perception of the students, how e-learners perceive visual objects. Gestalt concept helps us also to master unity and diversity. It leads to more consistent designs, enhance the potential for effective communication, because as you know, Gestalt theory focuses on the whole rather than the parts. So also this is a very important school to benefit in the context of e-learning. So we need actually to think then, based on all these schools and models of psychology, which helps us understand the psychological aspect of e-learning. So what are the psychological characteristics that can distinguish those successful learners from others? And actually, to answer this question, we need to go through all these schools and theories of psychology. But I thought just to present one study that was done to answer this question. And actually, basically, the study showed that in online learning, it is really important to observe for 3 elements, or 4, you may say: high sense of control and value. So these 2, high level of enjoyment and high level of engagement. These are 4 components very important to achieve high quality learning outcomes. Research shows that the most important positive emotions that found in research are these listed in front of you in this slide. In contrast to that, also as an instructor or as researchers, we need to observe and be sensitive about the negative emotions that are also associated with distance learning. Okay, so in the last 10 minutes that I have, let us see what kind of elements that the self-regulated learning model, actually SRL is a motivational model, and it is based on the main theories that I already explained. But the beauty of SRL is that it tries to help educators to apply different direct strategies and skills in order to help students succeed, whether it is in normal teaching or in online learning. However, in online learning, SRL became more important compared to the normal face-to-face learning. And you will see when I go through some elements and also theories, how these components are very important for online learners. Let us start with the definition. This is a definition of SRL that you can read here. As you can see from the definition, it includes different psychological strategies, skills, components that are very important and that were spread in different theories. SRL provides us with, you know, kind of a good umbrella to utilize in order to help our students. The importance of SRL, it focuses on learners' motivation, provides each learner with appropriate learning that fits one's ability, makes the learner positive and more active in the learning process, prepare the learner for the future and take responsibility of their own learning, trains the learners to solve a problem, develop the learning process so the students reach their highest levels, encourage students to rely on themselves, helps to overcome boredom, and usually, you know, when the student is alone, so more likely to be distracted by different things, and teachers find it difficult to keep the students paying attention all the time, encouraging students to solve problems. As I mentioned, many theories are available that helped actually informing these models. Big theories like Bandura's social cognitive theory or Piagetian, Vygotsky, Brown theory, Zimmerman, and other theories. Actually, there are many theories that, and actually the following slide will represent different models just to kind of go over some of these models, which are really, most of them provide good conceptualization for us as educators in order to help our students self-regulate their learning. This is one famous model that brings our attention to many important elements that we need to develop within our students. Another model focuses on the cognitive and metacognitive skills, and metacognitive is very important. And to explain the metacognition, it is controlling of our cognitive skills. So if we are saying an example of cognitive processes is thinking, then metacognition will be thinking about thinking. That's what we call metacognitive skills.
Professor Said, sorry to interrupt, you still have 5 more minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Metacognitive strategies may include student organizing control of a force. Cognitive strategies that students use like planning, monitoring, evaluating. Another model of self-regulation focuses on, beside cognition and metacognition, the motivational model. And this is for Bintridge, psychologist. He explained the important role of motivation in self-regulated learning. So in order to develop a self-regulated learners, we as educators need to focus on the motivational component like self-efficacy, intrinsic motivation, what kind of attribution, the style that our students have, what kind of value, what is the value that those students have regarding the learning or studying skills, as well as metacognition and cognition, as I mentioned. Another model looks at the personal dimension, social dimension, level dimension, and speed and organizational dimension. There are many principles actually based on these models. As you can see here, we start with the behavioral, going through these principles, which ends with creativity that we hope to reach. Another also another also chart shows some very important also principles, including sharing, cooperation, meaning-based learning, guidance, direction, and support. Three phases are very important when we try to train our students to be self-regulated learner. First of all, self-instruction, which is really important because it deals with self-concept and self-esteem. Also, self-judgment and self-monitoring. And I talk about this when I presented the optimism, pessimism study. And I showed that it is really important to pay attention to this. So self-regulation then should be involved in all aspects of online learning, whether it is knowledge, motivation, emotion, or behavior, in order to have a successful online learning. And these also, based on another model, are 5 dimensions for self-regulated learning that can be used in online learning. I will conclude then. If we are successful in training students in SRL, then we will get those learners. And usually our education systems love to reach this stage or love to get these educational outcomes in our students, whether at the school level or university level. Okay, last few slides. What is the way forward? We know that there is a gap between what we know and what we do, unfortunately. Now we have already known and seen a lot of advantages of online learning, and how can we benefit from online learning, facilitate online learning, and utilize it for better learning. But not always the case, because many people, as I mentioned earlier, they will go back to their comfort zone. Is it a technical problem, lack of information? No, I don't think so. It is inertia or resistance to change, which is really important here. And university schools need to address this issue. I got this slide from the IHI website, where they talk about the change framework, psychology of change. How can we understand change, and how can we pay attention to specific factors that influence us as instructors, students, educators, which should be actually addressed when we talk about self-regulated learning. And the last message is to train teachers, instructors, students. SRL training, actually we have started here at SQU. This is the 3rd year that our department offers SRL training through the Deanship of Postgraduate. And I hope that this will become kind of a culture that we have all in our school setting. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Saeed, for an informative and an interesting presentation. Before moving to the question answers, I'd like to ask the participants to please complete the survey appearing on your screen. Professor Saeed, we have a question from Dr. Vindia asking, what are your suggestions to improve self-efficiency as part of the process of motivating the students towards long-term goals in pursuing knowledge? So your suggestions, please.
Well, to briefly answer that question, I think we need to train those students using any model, actually, of the self-regulated learning that I presented, because most of these models capture the very important elements for having successful learners in all settings, actually, whether it is university or school setting.
Okay. Any other questions? So thank you very much. We don't have any other questions. and see you in future conferences as well, Professor Saeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctora, and thanks again to the ELT organizer for inviting me to deliver this speech.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saeed, for the informative presentation. I'm sure our attendees has learned a lot from the plenary speech. Dear attendees, now you can head to the conference website to access the virtual program. As I showed you earlier, this is the virtual program. These sessions will be running concurrently with a 5-minute break between them. Each paper and poster presentation will run for 25 minutes and the workshops will run for 50 minutes. I wish you a very positive professional development experience over these 2 days. Thank you.